This is an older Diamondback carbon fiber road frame. I got this one cheap from a local retailer because it's got a crack in the seat tube right at the clamp. I think most people would probably tell me to throw this away, but I'm a little bit stubborn and I think we can fix it. So in today's video, we're going to try and mend this and put it back on the road. See if we can't keep this frame out of the landfill. If that interests you, let's get started. Here's a better look at that crack. It starts at the relief for the seat clamp and it runs down along the edge of the top tube. If you look closely, there's actually a second crack, goes in the opposite direction. The inside of the seat tube, it's really not in good shape, especially where that crack is. The seat tube there is thin and you can see that some of the carbon is flaked out. I started this repair by sanding off all the paint on the outside and running a drill brush down through the center of the seat tube. This cleans it up, it gets it ready for the epoxy and the new carbon fiber to stick. I have a few spare carbon seat posts in my bin. I picked the one that fit inside the seat tube the best, and then I cut the head off of it so I was left with just a carbon tube. I am using some 27 by 30 millimeter carbon tube. It's not exactly the same dimensions as the seat tube, but it's close enough. I sanded down both tubes and I bonded them together with some 2-to-1 epoxy. My seat mast topper showed up today. This one is a Ritchie WCS seat mast topper. This one has a 30.2 millimeter ID. The carbon tube I'm using for the mast is 30.1. So I think it's going to be perfect, especially once I get a little carbon grease in here. So I need to figure out now what height my saddle should sit at. I measured my other bikes, and you would think that measurement would be consistent, but it's really all over the place. I found that the bikes that have a more upright seating position also seem to have a higher saddle height. So I went back and I remeasured just the bikes that are similar riding position. And I found that I need 26 3/8 inches from the center of the bottom bracket to the center of the seat rails. So this measures right now 27 3/8. So I am going to remove the seat mast and I'm going to cut 1 inch off of it using the wet tile saw. I want to make sure that the seat height on this frame is correct. So before I bonded the new carbon tube into the frame, I put the bike together temporarily so I could sit on it and check the seat height. Fortunately, I've got the saddle height correct, so I'm going to bond the new carbon tube into the frame. I am using the same 2-to-1 epoxy that I used to bond the tubes together. I want to make sure that there are no air bubbles in this bond, so I started by coating the inside of the seat tube with epoxy. I then coated the new carbon tube with epoxy and I pushed the two together. As I inserted the tube, I rotated it to help work out the air. I let that epoxy cure for about 48 hours. Then I mixed up some hard set filler and I filled in that original relief. I let that cure and then I sanded the filler to shape. The original seat tube was slightly larger than that 30 millimeter tube I bonded in place. So to contour the two together and to reinforce the repair, I wrapped 5 layers of carbon fiber. I then covered that with heat shrink tape, shrunk it down, and I let it set for 24 hours. There it goes. The carbon repair looks really good, but I want it to be nice and smooth. So I used some sandpaper and sanded it so that it blended the two tubes together. There were some low spots in the carbon fiber, so I mixed up another coat of hard set filler and I filled those in. Instead of trying to blend in the repair, I scuffed the entire frame and I gave it a coat of 2K clear. The final fit of the seat mast topper is spot on. You'll see throughout the video, I've got the bike in my park stand. It's not actually clamped. I've got the clamp down to keep it from falling out, but it's in here really loosely. There's about 3 millimeters of space between the clamp and the top tube. There is no clamping force here. This is just holding the bike so it doesn't fall out. So if we see comments down below from people lecturing me about clamping carbon frames in a stand, we'll know they didn't watch this part of the video. I want to use electronic shift on this bike, so I want an electronic 1x setup. I'm using Ultegra Di2 for most of the drivetrain. This is a wired 11-speed Di2 setup. I'll need to run wires through the frame. Here's how I'm planning to run those. For the crankset, I'm using an Ultegra R8000 crank. I've removed the chain rings and I've fitted a wolf tooth 42 tooth narrow wide chainring instead. I added these shaped chainring bolts to try and make everything look cohesive. I am using a Shimano XT M8000 cassette. This is an 11-42. This is one of the few wide range cassettes that'll fit a road wheel. Every once in a while I get scammed buying used bike parts on eBay. Happened most recently with this crankset. It was supposed to be a new takeoff crank, and it does look new. However, whoever installed the pedal on the drive side ran it in crooked and stripped out the threads. I reached out to the seller and he told me to go pound sand. So now I'm the proud owner of a crank with a stripped out pedal thread. Here's a better look at those threads. I tried threading in a pedal to see how it fit, and these threads are damaged so badly it pulls right back out. So here's how we're going to fix this. I'm going to start by drilling out the damaged threads. This is a 37/64 inch drill bit. It is the right size for 75% threads in aluminum for a 5/8 24 tap. I'm then going to run a 5/8 24 tap down through to cut threads for the insert. I started tapping in the drill press so that the threads were square to the crank arm. I then removed the crank and I finished tapping by hand using my vise. Once the threads are done, I clean those up with rubbing alcohol to remove the cutting oil, and then I bonded the insert in with some Loctite 648. This is actually bearing retaining compound, but it works really well for keeping these inserts in place. I finished that by filing down the excess insert and contouring it into the crank arm. I'm running an XT or an MT800 bottom bracket. This bottom bracket is 1 millimeter each side narrower than the Ultegra bottom bracket. This will allow me to run some spacers, shift the chain side to side to get the chain line correct. I put about 300 miles on the bike. I've been really happy with it. Sadly, one night, it was about midnight, I was riding through a major intersection and the front wheel kicked up a piece of metal. It went into the chain and got into the jockey wheel. The crank stopped instantly. It seized up solid and I fell over on my right-hand side and I fell over hard. I did a lot of damage when I hit the ground. The handlebars, they broke just on the inside of the right-hand shifter when they hit the ground. The rear derailleur wadded itself up. I've never seen a derailleur bent so badly. The chain got in between the cassette and the spokes, and it was bound up so tight in there, it took me 15 minutes and all my might to get it back out. It did a lot of damage. This bike has quickly become my favorite bike, so I decided it was worth fixing. I ended up replacing the handlebars, the wheels and tires. I replaced the saddle, the cassette, the chain, and the rear derailleur. All in, it cost me about $1,300 to put the bike back on the road. I want to take a quick look, show you guys the final bike and the final build. Back in August, I rode Be Strong Boulder. I rode the 40-mile course. On this bike, this 2013 carbon bike with a 1x drivetrain, I got the second fastest time on the 40-mile course. I actually got the 10th best time of all time. Last year, I rode the same course on a carbon fiber road bike with a 2x drivetrain. Same fitness, similar weather. This bike was 11 minutes faster than that bike with the 2x drivetrain. I've added links to the Strava page for both of these rides if you want to check them out. 1x drivetrain catches a lot of flack, but if this drivetrain was so inferior to a 2x drivetrain, how did I shave 11 minutes off of that time? It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's kind of it for today's video. I hope you got something out of it. Maybe an understanding of how to do carbon repair and that it's not such a big deal. Maybe an appreciation for the 1x drivetrain, recognizing that it's not as out there as people make it out to be. So until next time, I'll see you later.